Boston's mayor is under fire for a holiday hiccup. Michelle Wu reportedly sent an invitation for her holiday party exclusively intended for electeds of color. It was mistakenly distributed to all members of the Boston City Council by an aide. Approximately 15 minutes later, the aide, Denise DeSantos, sent a follow-up email and apologized for the earlier message about the holiday party scheduled for the next day, clarifying that the white councilors were not meant to receive an invitation.
The revelation is receiving harsh backlash online. Libs of TikTok wrote on X, the mayor of Boston invited only electeds of color to a holiday party. The email was mistakenly sent to all city council members, including the white ones. One white council member called it divisive. The party is still scheduled to take place, and only black council members were invited. Now, Boston City Council is comprised of 6 minority members and 7 white members. Seems like, why can't they just have you can have a party to celebrate the strides people of color have made in all facets of life, including being elected to Congress, that like everyone can attend?
Okay. I'm sure they'll take that under advisement. And we should never have any specific parties or events to celebrate any discrete groups. Not veterans, not people with physical impairments, not people who are celebrating St. Patrick's Day, not a Jewish celebration, not any discrete groups should ever have separate holiday parties or events in addition to the ones that are holistically celebrated.
Do you think a whites-only holiday party would generate some kind of backlash? I suspect that it would.
I think a Hanukkah event that had only white people, or a Celtic event that only...
creed-based events, not based on skin color.
We live in a country that has created a legal tiered hierarchy of a racist de jure system for the majority of the time that the country has existed. Only since my parents have been alive has that de jure system of segregation and apartheid with different laws for different people because of how they look been ended. And as a consequence, a lot of social and economic barriers still exist for people who are from those historically marginalized groups. Not because we came to America and decided we wanted to be different, because the laws of this country told us that we were. How have we now formed community groups, solidarity groups, legal advocacy groups, and social groups to advocate for our equality? And sometimes members of those groups who are still advocating in many instances for substantive equality, because again, those barriers only fell very recently, want to celebrate those accomplishments and their own accomplishments as a discrete group. Obviously, people like the Libs of TikTok account and other white groups feel very differently about that, but I can't help but observe that the ire seems to only be articulated when certain kinds of people get together, when those people are diverse racially as opposed to other discrete ethnic groups. We see this every year when there are complaints about a Caribbean Day parade, but not the violence and destruction that often comes around a St. Patrick's Day parade, because everybody drinks and everybody gets destructive around these parade dates. And it's hard for me to take those kinds of complaints seriously. If people really believe that Michelle Wu is a racist who treats white people badly, and is discriminating against them, they should take those charges very seriously and provide evidence of it and investigate it, but not make a mockery of a holiday party meant to celebrate the accomplishments of minorities in order to do so.
But as I just said, I don't have any opposition to a themed event that celebrates the accomplishments of minorities or calls attention to the specific plight or history of a minority group. But doing it exclusively just for people of a certain skin color strikes a lot of people as a betrayal of the very norm we're trying to get to, where people aren't treated differently based on that reality.
Okay,
well, anyway.
Robby, if they had a women's group, no one would have complained. If they had emailed all of the women on the council and said, we're having a ladies' holiday party, nobody would have complained.
Well, there are recognized differences between men and women. Men and women are different. Black people and white people are not.
Well, tell that to the government as of my mother's 5th birthday.
Okay, we're working to address those things. I mean, the legal discrimination that still exists in our society is in university campuses against white and Asian people, which we're trying to adjudicate at the highest levels of the Supreme Court to stop them from being discriminated against in the hiring and admissions practices.
Is your argument that the real racism in America is against white and Asian people at college universities, and there's nowhere else that people should be concerned about?
Racism, to the extent it's legalized and enshrined in our practices, is yes, substantially against Asian people.
All right. Well, that's a good reason for us to really go after Michelle Wu.
I don't. You just don't think this? Do you don't think this was a bad idea? You don't think this is an elected official? It's not embarrassing for her that. I mean, it's embarrassing first of all to send an email inviting a bunch of people to a party and then saying sorry, the whites can't attend. I mean, that's obviously a screw up.
Yeah, I think anytime there's well, first of all, I don't understand why they couldn't have told everybody. I don't think it should have been a secret because there's nothing to be ashamed of. So it's embarrassing only because there was an effort, apparently, not to clue everybody into the existence of this party. If they had just announced, we're having this party, any other affinity group party that's happening, here's where you go if this is your interest, then that's that. But it's so laughable at this point. I mean, when I was at a law firm, first of all, none of the people of color wanted to be involved in any of this. The white heads of the law firm foisted responsibilities on those of us who weren't white, the very few of us who weren't white, to basically run these programs in these groups, often at the expense of the substantive work that we should have been doing. And so...
Well, that sounds terrible.
Wait a minute. So the idea that it's like it was ever people of color who are trying to have exclusive events as opposed to white people trying to basically whitewash the real structural barriers that exist for people within a lot of these institutions, including specifically what's known as the bamboo ceiling at law firms and a lot of corporate environments where despite having a lot of metrics on paper that would indicate their success, Asian Americans tend not to be promoted into partnership at as high rates. And I have heard a number of characterizations of their work that indicate that it's a perception of a cultural fit problem as opposed to anything substantive. And I do think that's a real issue. So in order to avoid having to deal with those real structural issues and frankly, deeply embedded implicit bias against people at their law firms, they tell us to organize Thai cooking nights and have these kinds of parties and events. So I don't know. There's something that feels really rich to me about moving from a place where we have legal segregation and discrimination, and then we have de facto segregation and discrimination. We have ongoing cultural biases and economic disparities that exist within groups. And now when you eventually get what I think is the first Asian American mayor of Boston, she throws a holiday party, whether it's continuing those existing practices or because she wants to genuinely affirm and celebrate the diversity of her cabinet. Now we're being told that's anti-white by a bunch of people who never said a mumbly word about any discrimination against any other group in the history of America. But if people want to be mad at it, it's a free country and they can feel free to be mad on the internet.
Who never said anything about discrimination in America? What is that?
The libs of TikTok and the other people who are being critical of this event.
Okay, well, discrimination is wrong. This seems like an example of discrimination, and we can uplift minority voices and show support in an inclusive way. Seems like something we would prefer, especially for our elected political officials. If I'm going to be disinvited to a party, it can be because I'm lame, not because I'm my skin color. I think that's how most people feel about these things. But interesting that this was highlighted, and we'll have more rising right after this.